Welcome back. The DOJ and FBI vowing to investigate the apparent suicide of accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. At the news of the millionaire's death shocking the world and launching conspiracy theories on how he died while in federal custody. So where does the case go from here? Joining me now with some expert insight is criminal defense attorney Phil Hamilton. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
So a lot of people want to know, how did this happen and who should be, held accountable?
A lot of people, including myself. I mean, this is just absolutely ridiculous that, MCC, which is the jail that houses a lot of the federal inmates, including most recently El Chapo a few months ago.
Which is where Epstein was being held.
Which is where Epstein was being held, less than a mile from this studio, a very secure facility. I always like to refer to it as, satellite Guantanamo Bay. How is it that a man that just tried to kill himself a couple of weeks before this, who is the absolutely most high-profile individual that you have within that facility, able to kill himself? I mean, what, 5-6 days after getting off of suicide watch?
Right.
It's absolutely ridiculous. We know the information that he may have had. We knew that at least this go round, he was not going to walk away with the sweetheart deal that he walked away with, 11 years ago. So why is it that eyes were not on him, even to the extent that he had been moved off of suicide watch? The fact remains that we knew that this individual had tried to kill himself. What was to make anyone think that he wouldn't try to do it again?
So, yeah, why was he moved off suicide watch, to begin with? Why did that happen? You mentioned the information that he had. On Friday morning, thousands of documents, pages of documents was released that included a lot of names, so therefore a lot of conspiracy theories jumping off of that. One of those theories, President Trump retweeted. This is the tweet that he retweeted that was originally from Terrence Williams. It said, "Died of suicide on 24/7 suicide watch? Yeah, right. How does that happen? Hashtag Jeffrey Epstein had information on Bill Clinton and now he's dead. I see hashtag Trump body count trending, but we know who did this. Retweet RT if you're not surprised." So what about that? I mean, the conspiracy theories kind of tying the Clinton family and allegations that Clinton was involved with Epstein. We do know that he'd been on his plane several times.
Right.
At least we know that part.
I mean, the thing is, when we think about these conspiracy theories, the funny thing is right now, what do we have an issue with in the country as of this moment? Bipartisan consensus on pretty much any issue. But here, with respect to Epstein, it's where we find that we actually do have some bipartisan consensus with respect to the conspiracy theories. The right clearly is looking over at his dealings with Clinton over the years, the riding on the plane, things of those sorts. The left is looking at the fact that President Trump at some point, was known to kind of hang out with this guy.
With him.
Correct. So in that respect, we have a lot of people that are saying, he had a lot of high friends in high places. What did he know? Who potentially enabled him to, get away with these, these crimes, right? And so to that extent, that's where the conspiracy theorists are going to point and say, how, again, did he end up dead, and is that why he ended up dead?
Right. So, and then the other question is very important in terms of his victims. Now, is there any way that his victims can still see justice served, and how can they go about doing that?
No, I mean, great question. I mean, clearly not on the criminal end. I mean, in terms of having a criminal conviction or anything along those lines, we don't do posthumous criminal trials in this country. It just doesn't happen. So in terms of, getting the justice at this point, he already had some lawsuits pending against him personally. Now those lawsuits clearly are going to have to move forward against the estate. And, maybe to the extent that he's not here and doesn't have the ability to, you could say personally intimidate his victims or coordinate to have them intimidated or investigated, that might then allow some other people to feel a little bit more comfortable with coming forward with claims.
What about any co-conspirators? Could they take a closer look at anyone else that was involved with him and these actions?
I think particularly with respect to the allegations that were brought by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, who was not a party to that agreement that was made with him in Acosta down in Miami. I think that, if I in any way would have enabled him to kind of abuse these underage girls in New York, I potentially, as a co-conspirator, would be nervous.
Okay.
I would be nervous.
Yeah.
Because if that investigation continues on behalf of the Southern District of New York or with respect to the DOJ, FBI, whoever it is that's moving forward investigating those claims, yeah, absolutely. Like, you're not out of the blue.
Well, we know the victims want that for sure. Phil, thank you so much. It was great to have you with us. Appreciate your insight.
Thank you for having me.
Good stuff. All right, we'll see what happens.
The Department of Justice and FBI launching investigations into the apparent suicide of disgraced millionaire Jeffrey Epstein after it turns out he was taken off suicide watch. Attorney General Bill Barr appalled by the news, saying Mr. Epstein's death raises serious questions that must be answered. In addition to the FBI's investigation, I have consulted with the Inspector General. Joining me to react, former FBI Special Agent and U.S. Army Ranger Chad Jenkins. Chad, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Obviously, this is a very compelling case to follow right now. Immediately, my first concern is, why was Epstein taken off of suicide watch? And apparently, in order to take someone off of suicide watch, they need to file a report. Will the FBI, will the DOJ be able to see that report to figure out why this man was taken off suicide watch so quickly?
Well, to your point, I think everyone in America woke up yesterday just dumbfounded and horrified that Epstein was able to commit suicide, especially given that he attempted to commit suicide just a few weeks ago. And, you know, Inspector General will now investigate this because AG Barr did institute them to go ahead and start investigating, and answers need to be made of the questions that we have right now. It's unacceptable and it's ridiculous that Epstein was able to commit suicide and that he wasn't on suicide prevention or watch 24/7, given the validity and the prolific, high-profile case this is.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm guessing he would have had to have been evaluated by a psychologist. Someone would have had to approved that this man be moved to an SHU, which is a special housing unit, from being on suicide watch. So I'm sure that will all come through in the investigation. Can you talk to me a little bit about the difference, though, between the supervision that happens when someone is on suicide watch versus the type of supervision that should be happening when someone is shifted over to an SHU facility? Are they still watched as closely? Is there a greater possibility that that person can do physical harm to themselves?
Well, he was able to do that, so we're seeing that that did happen. But to your point, he would have had to go through interview process, very manipulative behavior given the what's being charged against him or what was being investigated against him, so that he was able to go ahead and do these interviews with these psychologists and get himself reduced off the suicide watch. There's got to be questions on that as well. If it's purely negligence at this point, but we got to see if there's also criminality within the Bureau of Prisons and the process that was done to allow him to get off the suicide watch.
And Chad, just quickly, the timing of his death is very suspicious. Just a day after thousands of these documents were unsealed that mentioned various people's names, very high-profile people, Prince Andrew, and Bill Richardson, and others who may have been implicated in these crimes. What does the timing mean to you? Quickly, we have about a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I think it shows that the onion layers, the peels were coming off of the onion and getting to the core of the investigation, and that it was most likely going to generate legs. And it's frustrating. It's horrific. Unfortunate is not a big enough word to describe what the victims are having to go through now and endure, seeing that they're not going to be able to see him serve justice or have to go and be accountable for the horrendous actions that he did.
Yeah.
That's where my heart goes out to. I'm disheartened and just completely saddened that they will not get to see him face to face and what a coward he was.
Well, Chad, we really appreciate you being here. We're going to continue following this case, obviously, and obviously the victims should be everyone's priority. They certainly are mine. Thank you so much.
Yep.
With a Fox News alert, Fox News now learning that Jeffrey Epstein was not checked on for several hours leading up to his death. This, according to a person familiar with the matter.
Fox also learning that Epstein should have been checked on every 30 minutes. Let's bring in Matthew Whitaker, former acting attorney general and incoming outside general counsel for PC Matic. Thank you so much for being here.
Congrats.
Glad to be here. Glad to be here.
What do you think? What do you make of what happened to Epstein? Do you think it was suicide?
Well, this is the great thing about the Department of Justice, and as the former Attorney General, you know, I headed up the Bureau of Prisons, among other things, and you know, I was very pleased that Bill Barr took this incredibly seriously and said we have to get to the bottom of this, and brought in Michael Horowitz, who is the Inspector General and who has a lot of experience investigating things that have happened at BOP, including in this New York City jail. I also know, was there when General Sessions appointed Hugh Hurwitz to be the head of BOP, and I think, he's a methodical, procedure-based person, and BOP, there's nobody that does it better than BOP, so I was really surprised to see that some of these protocols and procedures, the 30-minute check and the like, were not followed, and so I think there's some serious questions that are raised here, and once we hear the whole answer, I think we'll have a lot better picture. But there's no doubt that, I think reason and common sense would suggest that someone should have been checking on him based on just what had happened several weeks before with him.
You say there's serious questions being asked, but in the Wall Street Journal today, their op-ed basically says that this fiasco, this whatever's happened, and we're going to get the facts, but this is part of why Americans don't trust their government. How important is getting this investigation right, concise, and transparent?
Well, the transparency is the key. That's what builds confidence for the American people. If you don't give all of the facts and essentially a line by line as to what we looked into, what we talked to, what we found, what we saw, what was violated, if anything, and the who, what, just like the facts, then the confidence won't be there. And so we need ultimate transparency in this case. I think the questions surrounding this, something doesn't add up, and we need full transparency, and we need the answers on this.